Right, Shalom Aleichem Rabotai. Welcome to our Wednesday class on Yalkut Yosef. Last time we spoke about Tefillat Mincha Mekutzeret, a shorter Mincha. Shorter Mincha as we know it, where the Chazan basically doesn't repeat the Amidah, but rather starts out loud until Kedusha, finishes over there, and everybody continues with him. We were talking about that, and Igal asked a very good question that he remembered that in the Gemara there's a story about when are you obligated, when you're not obligated. Because one of the halachot that we brought down is that the Yalkut Yosef does not like this mincha mikutzer, this shorter mincha. And he says, avoid it, try to pray a full mincha. It's really not likatchila, it's really not recommended. However, if you look out in the world, you'll see in many places, especially workplaces, they do have mincha mikutzeret. People are in the middle of the day, they're in a rush, they want to pray in a short matter so that they are more relaxed, maybe they have clients or whatever it is. So this topic, I didn't see it in the Yalkut Yosef, and I don't know any Rishonim that talk about it, because what Igal did remember and what does appear in the Gemara, there is a source to the idea of praying a shorter tefillah when people are working for somebody. The Gemara says that it depends how much time they have to pray. If the balabait gives them according to how much time they're working, or maybe they're just getting paid according to the fact that they can eat whatever they want while they're peeling fruits from the tree. There are certain discussions like that in the Gemara. And then it says over there that there's something called tefillah mekutzeret. What is the tefillah mekutzeret? Tefillah mekutzeret over there is not exactly our tefillah mekutzeret. It's something different, where back in the day, I don't see this anywhere today, but back in the day, they had a tefillah mekutzeret, which means the first three brachot, Magen Avraham, Mechem Etim Ata Kadosh, the last three brachot, and instead of having 12 or 13 brachot in the middle, they had one bracha. Anybody knows what this bracha is called? This is called Havinenu. This special tefillah is called Havinenu. Today we don't know it. It's not common. We don't see anything like this. So back in the day, when somebody was working for someone, they said, listen, you're going to take now 7-8 minutes to pray a long Amidah. Time is money. You're working for somebody. It may not be right. Make it shorter. That was the discussion in the Gemara. What we have today is a little bit different. That tefillah mekutzeret of the Gemara is not done today. But we do see in minyanim where they do one tefillah instead of a repetition. So I did find one acharon that talks about that, which happened to be a huge acharon. His name is the Pnei Halacha, Rav Melamed. Many of you might know his book, amazing halacha book that goes through all the halachot. It's so well organized. If any of you ever have a chance to hear a shiur from the Pnei Halacha, from the rabbi, you can find him on YouTube. And he gives halachot. It's just so organized. Like you see the computer in his mind, topic after topic. Any links that he goes to, he pulls them and he comes right back. Beautiful. So he wrote, as in the Zchut of Igal, I was looking to see what exactly happens nowadays. Maybe there are other opinions, because the Yalkut Yosef is a little bit strict on avoiding this tefillah that is short, and we see in workplaces that people do it. So the Pnei Halacha said like this. He said, someone asked me this question. Can we pray short mincha? It's in the middle of a workday. He said, off the bat, I answered him, yes, you're allowed to. It's a workday, no problem. He said, but then, I already told this to Igal, then I got a reaction. Someone else contacted me and says, Rabbi, how are you allowing this short mincha? We know that it's not an ideal thing. It's not likatchila. And today, in the office place, everybody understands that when you hire somebody, you're going to give him time to pray. Well, you're so strict on him. He said, even more so. Even if you hired him and you're strict with him, but come on, people don't take a 5-minute, 10-minute break to drink coffee, tea. The boss is never so strict on you that every second of your time is that valuable. Maybe if you're standing as a cashier in a kosher McDonald's, every second there matters, okay? Let's put it like that. But most case scenarios, you work, you have certain things that you need to do during the day. And therefore, he said, Rabbi, why are you saying that it's allowed? Everybody's being comfortable with praying a longer mincha. So he said, after considering his response, I'm not taking away my answer where you're allowed to do it. But on the other hand, I see the other side. The other side says, a longer tefillah is obviously better. Some people want to have a longer tefillah. And therefore, my conclusion is like this, says the Pnei Halacha. My conclusion is, as opposed to the Yalkut Yosef, he says that if everybody agrees to pray a long mincha, perfect, do that. But if there's even one person that says, guys, I'm in a rush, my boss is waiting for me, it could even be his own business. He doesn't have to have a boss, but he has clients waiting for him and he's uncomfortable. Mincha, just so you know, mincha is a very powerful tefillah and a meaningful tefillah. One of the reasons is because it's in the middle of the day. In the morning, before you start your day, it's a little bit easier to pray shacharit. You know, it's longer, but you didn't start anything yet. You're not in the middle of a business deal running out before sunset. I'll read the end of the day. Mincha is in the middle, so you get a lot of points for that. That's a challenge. So he says, since we have this challenge of mincha, even if one person says, I'm in a rush, be mitchashev, say, reconsider the view, we'll do a short mincha. He says, however, if you have a bigger minyan, it's 25, 30 people, and 10 people say, listen, we don't want to do the short mincha. You guys want to do it? He said, you're allowed to do a breakaway mincha. Let them pray the short one, and the 10 or 15 or whatever that want to pray the longer one. If there are enough people, you could split the minyan. This is not a light thing to do, because we have learned here, if you remember when we started Yalkut Yosef, there's something called Berov Am Hadrat Melech. When there are a lot of people, the tefillah has more value. When 10 people are playing the trumpet when the king walks in, or when 1,000 people, what's more honorable to the king? Obviously, more people. So when you split the minyan, it's as if to say you're less people, even though if you can, at the end of the day, everybody's praying to Hashem, right? But that minyan has certain significance, and now you made it smaller. The Mincha will tell you, if you want to be able to, one group pray long, one group pray short, you're allowed to split the minyan so that everybody's happy. These guys go back to work, these guys pray relax. But since we are trying to show a certain channel in this shiur, which is the Yalkut Yosef, and again, whoever follows the Yalkut Yosef, amazing. Whoever doesn't follow, whoever has a different Rav, it's okay. And no one's forcing any halacha on anybody. But we're learning his book, the Chief Rabbi of Israel, to see his train of thought that he received from his father, Rav Shalom, Rav Yosef. It's not always 100% like Rav Ovadia as well. Even amongst the brothers, the sons of Rav Ovadia Yosef, you have Rav Avraham Yosef, Rav David Yosef, and Rav Yitzchak Yosef, that Baruch Hashem, 3 huge Talmidei Chachamim. There's also Rav Moshe, there was also a very big Talmid Chacham, and there's an older brother that passed away. He passed away in the lifetime of Rav Ovadia. His name was Rav Yaakov Yosef. Some say he was greater than all. He was a giant, Rav Yaakov Yosef. But either way, each one sometimes has a different input. He understood his father this way, that way. So again, not everything is so black and white, but the Yalkut Yosef is a little bit more strict on this, and he says better to avoid it. But of course, if you're doing it, you have what to rely on. And as I said in last year, even without this whole story about the Pnei Halacha, Rabbeinu, the rabbi of our community, Rav Ben Chaim, is definitely wide enough shoulders to rely on, and he says that it's okay. So it's okay. We're not here to take out of the root any things that are happening in our community. Baruch Hashem, it's all under Rabbeinu Agadol, Rav Ben Chaim. Okay, so after that introduction, back to our topic of Chazarat HaShatz, the Chazara of the Shaliach Tzibur. So the question is, what is the last time I'm allowed to do Chazara? My uncle is here visiting from the States, and he went to a minyan the other day, and they had 9 people, 9 people. They were running to the streets trying to get a person before the 10th comes. He doesn't come. What do? It became very, very late. It's close to sunset. Sunset already happened. You're allowed to pray even after sunset, within the 13.5 minutes after sunset. You're even allowed to start Mincha. The question is, what about the Chazara? We started Mincha, we're praying, and now I want to do the repetition. But it's dark outside. What is the time that from that time on, you tell me, sorry, you cannot do the repetition anymore. You have to do it one time and that's it. Says the Yalkut Yosef, if you will be able to finish the entire Chazara, within those 13.5 minutes between sunset and Tzet HaKochavim, that's called a Ben HaShmashot, then you can start. But if there are only 2 minutes left until Tzet HaKochavim, until the stars come out, right? These are times that I'm saying them verbally, but if you look at the calendars, you'll see that there's exact times to that. So Tzet HaKochavim, according to the Sephardim, is 13.5 minutes after Shkia, after sunset. That's the time. So it says, if you're going to be able to finish the entire Chazara in those 13.5 minutes, you're welcome to do the Chazara. But even if you're going to miss 1 minute of it, that's going to be after, we don't say over here, oh, since I started, I can continue. No, when you're alone, when you're praying Mincha alone, you're also allowed to pray within those 13.5 minutes. And even if you started a minute before those 13.5 minutes pass, let's say after 12.5 minutes after sunset, you could start Mincha. Since you started, you're welcome to continue and finish. But that's when you're on your own. When you're doing a Chazara for a group, Halachai says the Yalkut Yosef, so the 13.5 minutes are Zmaniot, are like time minutes. It's basically about 15 minutes. That's how the Yalkut Yosef says it. Of course, it depends on the season of the year, but roughly 15 minutes. That in that time you will be allowed to pray the Chazara, assuming that you will finish it within that time after Shkia. If you have no questions on that, we'll jump into the next topic. Okay, now what happens when there's a shtiblech? A shtiblech is when you have back-to-back minyanim. In our community, you don't see it so much that simultaneously, 5 minutes after, you have another minyan. But there are a lot of shuls in Israel, some in Yerushalayim, some in Bnei Brak, that minyanim are in one big complex, and it's just you walk in and you pray, So there's a breakaway minyan here, there. You have like 20 minyanim simultaneously. One of the famous ones in Israel in Bnei Brak is called Itzkovich. There's like 5 floors in that building. You have like 10 minyanim on each floor. Anytime you want to pray Mincha, Arvit, you walk in, up, down, you'll find a minyan that started 10 minutes ago, or is starting in 10 minutes, or is starting right now. It's unbelievable. So these are called shtiblech, back-to-back minyanim. Now, why am I bringing this introduction? Because what happens if the shtiblech is praying Arvit a little bit early? You're allowed to. There's what to rely on. We'll touch that maybe soon, Bezat Hashem. And I still didn't pray Mincha. So I'm walking in to pray Mincha. But now, what are they doing? They're saying, Baruch Hu et Hashem HaMevorach for Arvit. Now, I walked in, and I hear the Baruch Hu. Can I answer that Baruch Hu? Or if I answer that Baruch Hu, is it considered like it's Arvit time, so now I can't go back and pray Mincha? I'm going to miss Mincha. Halacha is the question clear? The Baruch Hu, does the Baruch Hu make it into nighttime for me or not? So the answer is there's a difference between in the middle of the week and on Shabbat. It says in the middle of the week, even if people are praying Arvit and you haven't prayed Mincha yet and they're saying Baruch Hu and whatever they're saying, you're allowed to answer comfortably. Because the fact that they are saying it doesn't make it into nighttime for you. For you, it's still not nighttime, but you're answering their Baruch. However, says the Yalkut Yosef, and this is of course an accepted halacha, on Shabbat that's not the case. There are a few things that if you walk into shul and they are saying, if you say it with them, it's considered like you already took upon yourself Arvit, and in other words, you took Shabbat upon yourself. That's where the difference begins. If they are saying Baruch Hu for Arvit Shel Shabbat, and I sit in pray Mincha, they prayed early, and now I'm coming to the later minyan. If I answer Baruch Hashem HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed, I accepted Shabbat in that moment. If I accepted Shabbat, I cannot go back to pray Mincha. Or if I sing with them Mizmor Shel Yom Shabbat, or if I say with them Boi Kala at the end of Lecha Dodi, all these things are things that make you accept Shabbat, and by doing that, you won't be allowed to go back and pray Mincha. So the recommendation is that if they're about to do one of those things, they're about to say Baruch Hu, and you're in the shul and you did not pray Mincha, during the week again, no problem, answer and continue. But on Shabbat, you cannot stay there. You have to step outside before they say the Baruch Hu, pray Mincha on your own, and then walk back in. Because if you're in there, you answer Baruch Hu, you're in trouble. You're in a difficult situation. So no answering Baruch Hu, step outside, pray Mincha. You can't pray Mincha over there because if they are praying Arvit and in the same place you're going to be praying Mincha, it's called Tarte de Satre. It's when two things contradict each other in the same time. But maybe it's worth it to talk a little bit about the timing of the tefillot. As I said, you're allowed to pray Arvit early. What is the source for this? How come we can sometimes pray Arvit? Arvit comes from the word Erev, night, darkness. How are we praying it early when the sun is still out there? So you have to know that there's an opinion in the Gemara by Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yehuda holds that the time for Arvit is not from sunset, or maybe Tzet HaKochavim, 13 minutes after sunset, but he holds that it's rather an hour and 15 minutes, again, these are temporary minutes, but roughly it's like that, before sunset, which means if sunset is at 6 o'clock, according to our Shita, we can pray Mincha until 6 o'clock, and we can pray Arvit from 6 and 13 and a half minutes, let's say. Okay, and we'll talk about that gap in a minute. According to Rabbi Yehuda, he says, no, if sunset is at 6 o'clock, you can pray Mincha only until 4:45. According to Rabbi Yehuda. And once 4:45 came in, which is an hour and 15 minutes before sunset, then it's already Arvit time, you're allowed to pray Arvit. So according to his opinion, hour and 15 minutes before Shkia, I can pray Arvit. Now, we don't really follow that halacha lema'aseh so much. Not a lot of people in their mind, everything is an hour and 15 minutes before sunset. It's not darkness, not. But we are allowed to rely on that opinion for certain situations. what can happen? Let's bring a scenario. There's a scenario that you can contradict yourself, where you're saying, listen, right now I'm praying Mincha. It's 5 minutes to 6. I can still pray Mincha, whatever, let's say 15 minutes to 6. I finished at 5 minutes to 6, okay? According to me, it's not dark outside yet. I just prayed Mincha. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, I prayed Mincha in the time of Arvit, but now it's already Arvit time. So what do? I say, listen, I have what to rely on. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's Arvit time. I'm going to pray now Arvit right after Mincha. That happens in almost every shul. We do it back to back. But what are we really saying here? We're saying that on one hand, we don't hold like Rabbi Yehuda that holds that right now it's Arvit time. That's why we're praying Mincha. But once we finish the tefillah, you know what? Actually, we do hold like him that now it's Arvit time, and even though it's not dark outside, we're praying Arvit. That's again called Tarte de Satle, two things that contradict each other. You're using Rabbi Yehuda for one for Arvit, but not for Mincha. If you're relying on the opinion, you're relying on it completely. Pray Mincha at 3 o'clock, at 4:45 pray Arvit. But if you're going to pray Mincha at the time that he holds that it's Arvit, and then pray Arvit, you're contradicting yourself. So this is the question that comes to the table of a lot of places. We want to do back-to-back tefillot, but on the other hand, we'll be creating a machloket within Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. We'll use it for one and not for the other. Is the question clear? This is a famous question, halacha, everybody should know this. So how do we rely on it? How does every shul do mincha and arvit back-to-back? And the answer is that the reason we are allowing it is because we say that if we don't do mincha and arvit back-to-back, we may lose people from the crowd. They may go back home, you know what, I'll go later, and then they may not even pray Arvit. And because of that, Chachamim said, you know what, let's let them what to rely on, that even though it's still sunny outside, they think that right now it's Arvit according to Rabbi Yehuda, and they're allowed to pray Arvit early. And from there, we are allowed to pray Arvit early. That's our source to during the week. On Shabbat, it's a little bit different. We're accepting Shabbat early. That's a blessed thing. But during the week, you're allowed to pray Arvit early. But know that this is a little bit of it's not ideal. No, I do it all the time. We do it all the time. But we should know that, really that we're leaning on something in order to do it over here. When you go to Ashkenazim Minyan, a lot of them are very strict that they don't do Arvit before Shkia. So like there's a minyan here in Ra'anana, it's never back to back. They come, they have about a 15-20 minute break between Mincha and Arvit so that they don't do that thing. Sfardim are a little bit more lenient on it. And also since Corona time, a lot of Ashkenazim Minyanim and Ra'anana also became more lenient and they started doing it back to back because, of course, we have what to rely on. So if I ask in conclusion, let's see if you remember, whose opinion is it that even though it's still light outside, if it's within an hour and 15 minutes before Shkia, I can pray Arvit? Whose opinion is that? Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, it's called Plaga Mincha. Plaga Mincha, an hour and 15 minutes before Shkia. That's the famous opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. It's considered already time to pray. So remember that. Now, regarding joining a minyan, I already prayed Arvit. I prayed early Arvit, but there are 9 people here praying Mincha and they need a 10th guy. Can I be completing their minyan and answering them? Or do I say, hey, I can't answer before we allowed you to answer, but you weren't part of the minyan. Now you want me to make the minyan. Can I make the minyan? Can I be the 10th guy to create the minyan or not? Says the Yalkut Yosef, even though you already prayed Arvit, you can be a minyan maker for them and join them for mincha and be their 10th. But all of this, he says, is during the weekdays. On Shabbat, he doesn't forbid it, but he says, Ze lo ra'ui. Lo ra'ui means it's not worthy that you should do that. A person that already prayed Shabbat, now he's going to go to Mincha Shel Chol and complete a minyan. Try to find someone else. If you can't, talk to me. But it's not ra'ui. It's not the best thing to do. During the week, no problem. You could do it without any questions. On Shabbat, try to avoid it. Try that someone else will join them that hasn't prayed Mincha yet. All right. Regarding Kiryat Shema. So we know that we have to read Shema twice a day. I'm not talking about Kriyat Shema that we do on Alamita or the Kriyat Shema of the Korbanot, but the Kriyat Shema from the Torah, it says, Uvshochdecha uvkumecha, which means when you're laying down and when you're standing up. That's the physical interpretation of what it means, but we learned from there that we need to read it twice a day. The famous machloket between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel in the Gemara. I see Steve is nodding. A lot of people know this machloket. Beit Shammai took it literally. That one of them should be actually when you're standing up, and one should be when you're sitting down. But halacha is like Beit Hillel. It doesn't matter if we're standing or sitting. Those represent times. The shochbecha means nighttime, when people lay down, when they're going to sleep. Nighttime. You have to have one shema at nighttime, uvkumecha, and one when you are awake. Chachamim put this in our tefillat shacharit, and that's the shema that we read in the morning, and another shema that we read at night. But what happens when I'm praying this early Arvit that we're talking about, that I have what to rely on because I rely on the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda? Let me say it again. But I finished praying Arvit. But according to the Gemara, I didn't keep my obligation of reading Shema at nighttime. Okay, I had what to rely on to pray early Arvit. But my Shema was an early Shema. It wasn't a Shema of Ufshoch Becha in the time that people are sleeping because it was still light outside. Halacha is, therefore, when you pray Arvit back to back, when it was an early Arvit before Tzet HaKochavim, before the stars came out, then you will have to repeat just the Shema, which is okay. So in a lot of shuls, they tell you, guys, we're praying right now, just remember to repeat Shema after we finish. They don't want to wait the time. They read it, it's okay. You could repeat the Shema after, but this is the reason why we're repeating it. Because if we wouldn't do it, we wouldn't have the Shochbecha uvkumecha. Shochbecha is the time that people are laying down. Uvkumecha is the time that people are standing up. So the morning one is easy, but the night one, if you prayed early, you'll have to repeat it after once again. All right. He also
Ziv, question, sorry.
Yes,
how did the Rabbi Yehuda came to this conclusion that you have an hour, 15 minutes early? Like from where?
Interesting. The Gemara says that he holds like this, that there's something called Mincha Gedola and Mincha Ketana. What's the difference? Mincha Gedola begins half an hour after midday. Why is it called Mincha Gedola, big Mincha?
Because you have more time.
Because the day is still big. Mincha Gedola, exactly, you have more time. Mincha Ketana begins 2.5 hours before sunset. It's called Sha'at Sh'it V'chetzi, the 9.5 hour out of 12 hours of a daytime. After 9.5 hours, that's called Mincha Ketana. That's the ideal Mincha. It's better to do a Mincha Ketana. He holds, and I don't know what's his reasoning, he has his own understanding, that after half of that time, half of Mincha Ketana, you already pray, it's already Arvit time. If you're asking what's his logic, I don't understand it. I don't know it. A lot of the times their opinion is that it's not so clear how they saw it, but that's how they saw it. We have a lot of machlokot regarding when sunset is exactly. Even until today, the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam holds that Shabbat comes in much later and it comes out much later as well. So we don't go by his opinion, definitely not taking Shabbat later. He takes Shabbat in, let's say, 30, 40 minutes after us and takes it out at 40 minutes after us. We don't take that opinion. But a lot of Sfardim do take Shabbat later, 40 minutes after everyone else takes it out. In America, the Rabbeinu Tam time and the actual Shabbat exit time is not so far apart. But in Israel, it's a 40-minute gap. So those that keep Rabbeinu Tam, they will take 40. So how do you have a machloket on something that you could see? The sun is here, the sun is not here, night and day. Everybody has their understanding. So I don't know how to answer why he saw it like that, but his opinion is that within that half time of the 2.5 hours, which is Mincha Ketana time, half of that, it's already time to pray Arvit. But maybe I'll look into it. I'll see if I could find a reasoning to his understanding. It's a good question. Okay. So now what happens if people were learning? There was a shi'ur before Tefillat Arvit. So what do we do after a shi'ur? Rabbi Hanania ben Akashia Omer, don't miss that Kaddish. The Kaddish after a shi'ur Torah is a very high Kaddish. Rabbi Ben Chaim says that in his yeshiva in Porat Yosef, where he was learning under Rav Ovadia Yosef, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, which by the way, this week was his Yortzeit, and we owe a lot to him, especially the Sfardim, but not just because of what the books that we're learning from that obviously came from his, his tree, because it's his sons that continue his dynasty, but he made a big change in Israel, and I'd like to say she would be to his Ilyum Neshama, and he lifted the Sfaradim. It used to be very difficult and different. Every kashrut here was just according to the Ashkenazi opinion, and a lot of things that weren't good enough for us, it just said kosher, and all the Sfaradim ate it. He made a separation so people understand that each one has to keep his tradition and his halachot, and he raised up the level of the importance of Sfaradim, and now, Baruch Hashem, we all owe it to him, besides all the great Torah that he brought to the world and whatnot. So לעילוי נשמתו בעזרת השם. So he says that if you learn Torah and then you do the Kaddish, I didn't finish my point. The point was that in his yeshiva in Porat Yosef, they used to pay money to read that Kaddish. Who's going to get that Kaddish, that Al Israel after the Limud Torah? I don't know why it was like that, like only one could say, why can't the few people say, but that's what Rabbi Chaim says that it was. So don't miss that Kaddish. But you're saying Kaddish Al Israel, and a second later you're saying Hashem tzilakot imanu mizgavna kol sela, Hashem tzilakot biyom korenu Kaddish. Says Yalkut Yosef, no. Don't do another Kaddish right after that. You just had a Kaddish. When you have a Kaddish after learning and you're starting Arvit, start from Vehu Rachum. So you don't have to read that extra half Kaddish before. If there's no Kaddish before, then we start. That's another point that he brings. He also says that we should repeat Hashem Elokechem Emet. Why? Because in the Kriyat Shema, there are 245 words. And a man in his body has 248. Ramach Ivarim, 248 body parts. So, as if to make a connection between the body and a Kriyat Shema, we want to read 248 words, not 245. So we repeat the Hashem Elokechem Emet so that we reach 248. The Ashkenazim don't do that. The Ashkenazim add 3 words in the beginning. They say El Melech Me'eman. Have you ever seen that before? As a kid, I learned in yeshiva institutions, the Ashkenazi, they would teach me El Melech Me'eman. We don't say that. We say Hashem Elokechem Emet a second time, and that's how we get to that number. By the way, it's ideal that you wouldn't say it, that the Chazan would say it and have kavanah for you. However, if you have a doubt that the Chazan is having kavanah for you, which most of the cases you don't know who's the Chazan, what is he thinking about, then say it yourself. But if you know that's a serious Chazan that's having you in mind, you don't read it twice. Better just read it with him, let him read it a second time, and you continue. Final halacha, before we start Bezrat Hashem Yalkut Shabbat. מי שמתפלל ערבית ונזכר שכבר התפלל. What happens? I'm praying ערבית. Let's say I joined that Mincha. They asked me to be a 10th after I already prayed. Naturally, I didn't notice. I started praying with them. And then in the middle of the tefillah, I'm in Refaenu. I say, oh my God, I'm praying Arvit. I already prayed Arvit. What do I do right now? Not so common because I'm sure all of you are very focused, but Yalkut Yosef says this may happen. So what do? He says, continue praying. Don't stop in the middle. Continue praying and just have in mind that this prayer is a nedava, is a gift to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And as we've learned, when you pray tefillat nedava, you have to be mechadesh something. Pray for something that you didn't pray in your last tefillah, or else what type of gift is that if you did it before? It has to be something new. So think about wife, the children, whatever you want to have a new kavanah in mind, have it in mind and ask for it as well. He says, however, everything that we mentioned right now is in Arvit. But in Shacharit or Mincha, if you already prayed them and now you're praying them again, stop exactly where you are and do not continue. What's the difference? Why in Arvit I'm allowed to continue? I say Nedava, and in Shacharit and Mincha I can't continue and say Nedava. What's the difference? He explains. It's because Arvit, why are we praying Arvit? We know that Arvit is not an obligation, it's Reshut. But we accepted it upon us. So since in our mind, anyway, this tefillah is kind of a gift. We're not really obligated to pray Arvit. We accepted it. But we are obligated to pray Shacharit and Mincha. So when I started praying Shacharit and Mincha, I saw it as an obligation. Since I was wrong about that obligation, I stopped right away. But Arvit, anyway, was kind of a gift to Hashem, so I'm allowed to continue it as a gift to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a very nice distinction over there. Okay, Rabotai, B'siman tov mazal tov. Time is up. I'm just going to remind you that next week, we haven't been tested for a long time, but we went through so many parts of the Shulchan Aruch, Baruch Hashem. It's really an achievement. The last 2 years, we've achieved a lot. Last things that we got tested on was reading the Sefer Torah, halachot of Bet Knesset, halachot of Netilat. Now we're left with halachot of Netilat Yadayim, halachot of Hamotzi, stuff during the meal, on Birkat HaMazon, the blessings on fruits, praying Mincha and Arvit, what we learned right now. So these are going to be the topics in the test. And of course, in the next few days, I'm going to review all my notes that I read from to prepare this for you. And I'll point out the things that I think are most important to remember as a Jew. Send you the questions and the answer. Next week, we'll do this review test as it is our custom. And after that, B'ezrat Hashem, we can begin the important halachot of Shabbat. All right,
thank you. Bye, Ziv. Thank you.
Azak Baruch, grande.
Tagoro.